Hi, so nice to see you. I'm Ann Cantrell from FIT. We're pleased and so honored to have you all here today for this. I'm about to disappear. My main job is just to have you all here. We're super excited. We're very, where we set last year that we had to cancel our programming. This year we're going to be all virtual, but we're excited to have a really impactful programming with your panel included. So I will let Swati take it from here.
Oh, thanks, Anne. Thanks again so much for having me too. This is such a great honor to be speaking with all of you. Did everyone get a chance to read through the draft questions? And before we start, I just wanted to take an opportunity to just to say if there was something on there that was really pressing in terms of your own initiatives and what you would like to speak about, please like let me know and I can add that in. We're all good. And Tabitha, you saw that I had adjusted things based on your latest work. I hope that looked.
Yes. Yeah,
I hope
thank you
that
so much.
okay, great. Great. Well, if well, if you guys have any questions for me, we can just sort of get into it and just sort of go right into it. Unless you feel like there's something that you want to talk about beforehand, or if there's anything that's like off limits that you don't want to talk about, or is everything just right there on the table?
Are they going to be editing this or? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it will be edited, but Anne did ask me to try to keep things as tight within an hour as possible.
Okay.
Um, and Mara, did you get a chance to read through the questions too?
I looked through them, and we'll just, it'll be an organic flow, but yes, got it.
That definitely like reflects, I feel like, your work and the wherever you are, which is just absolutely gorgeous with
Agree.
all of these organic materials. So you're definitely
Thank you.
on brand with that approach. Okay, well, I can if I have the thumbs up from Anne, we can just go ahead and get started, I guess. Okay, great. Well, welcome to FIT's 15th annual Sustainable Business and Design Conference, and it is my absolute honor to be your moderator today. My name is Swati Argade, and I'll tell you a bit about myself. But first, I wanted to talk to you about what we're going to be discussing today, which is community and education. This is the community and education component and panel of this conference. And I'm so honored to introduce to you our amazing panelists today, Mara Hoffman, Ngozi, Okaro, and Tabitha St. Bernard. And all of these amazing women and activists in their own right and social justice warriors are here to talk to us about how they've built community within their organizations and use their organizations as platforms to address the issues that come up within our industry. And it's been really interesting just to think about how much our industry has changed over the years, and how when we first started out, or even years before we were actually working in sustainable fashion or ethical fashion, it might have been called eco fashion at the time. There was such a there was such a focus on the environment, and we weren't really talking about the people. That we were mostly talking about the planet, but we all know that the people of the planet we cannot ignore the people of the planet when we're talking about the environment, and those two things are inextricably connected. So we've all gone through so much in the past year, and but what I would like for all of you first to do is to introduce yourself and to tell us about you, I love your origin story, if you could share that with us, and what your organization does and how you've built community in this past year. Ngozi, why don't you go ahead and start?
I had the worst feeling that you were going to say that. So thank you so much, Swati. I'm so excited to be here, especially next to Tabitha and Mara, and I'm really grateful to Ann and FIT for putting this opportunity together. I lead Custom Collaborative, a nonprofit social enterprise. We're focused on providing earned income opportunity within sustainable fashion or ethical fashion to women from low income and immigrant communities. And we do that in three ways, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I'm just really excited to be here and to share and to learn today.
Would you tell us a little bit about your origin story and like how you got started and where you came from and how you found yourself in this space? Because I understand that you also have a legal background as well.
Yes, a legal background, I guess, behind me, in fact. So I started Custom Collaborative because I was getting really lovely clothes made by a dressmaker in New York, and she was making them herself, not charging that much money, but they were really outstanding. And whenever people would say to me, "Oh, I like that dress, I like that pantsuit," I'd ask them, "All right, well, how much would you pay for something like this that fit your body and affirmed you?" And what people told me was multiples of what I was actually paying her. And so then I just thought how much better it would be for Mariama, who's a dressmaker's name, the community, and people who like to wear clothes that fit, if we could teach her some more skills, expand her network, and help grow businesses like hers. And so then that's really the impetus. I mean, the real story of the story, if we have to go there, is that my dad is Nigerian, and across the continent of Africa, people can basically get clothes made. And so I knew that I could find seamstresses who could make clothes for me, which I really liked because I'm tall, and it was hard to get things that were great off of the rack.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Mara, if you could share how you got started in fashion and what brought you into sustainable fashion. We'd love to hear your story.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I've been on panels with both Tabitha and Ngozi, and soon we can tell each other's stories, each other's origin stories. But that's a compliment. I love these women. I'm so excited to be here as well. Thank you for having all of us. Thank you for including me in this conversation. I studied fashion in school. I went to Parsons and I graduated in '99, and was always somewhat of a, in the best possible way, a misfit, I think, within the traditional sense of what it meant to be in the fashion industry and what we were being trained for in a way. And so upon graduating, I was making all of my clothes. I was making clothes for my friends, for stylists. And you've heard that story, but I brought a bag of clothing to a friend's consignment store and met Patricia Fields, who is the stylist and creative visionary for the fashion for Sex and the City. And it was that first season of creating that look. And she bought the bag of clothing, and she had 2 stores at the time in New York City. And so the next day her buyers called and sent their buyers to my studio, little studio apartment. I put everything that I had a pile of clothes on my floor. I put the clothes on for them and they placed their first order. So that was the origin story. That built, that progressed, that grew. That was, now I'm so used to saying it was 20 years ago, but this year was the slowest and fastest year at the same time, which I don't know how time can do that, where it can just be like all things at once. But we were just talking about it being our 20th year in business, but come May, like May is tomorrow, it'll mark 21 years in business, which is so wild because I'm still like, what? Not over the 20th. And at the 15-year mark is when we really hit our kind of change or die. I hit my change or die moment around the work I was doing, my involvement in the fashion industry, and the brand was really on this particular trajectory for one channel of growth, and my awareness had grown to a certain point of mega discomfort, and that's when we made the shift towards beginning a journey towards sustainability. And that was about like 6.5 years ago. And so we've spent that past 6.5 years building towards very different model. And the community bit of it has really been about, for me, running a business that is the center of this particular community and the people that we hold within it, and then the extensions of that business through our supply chains, through all of the different touch points of manufacturing, as well as the different touch points within our close and expanded community, our friends and the people that we hold close. And the company has been able to sort of in a way expand past just traditional offerings of clothing, but be able to be in larger conversations and be able to hold space for those conversations to exist. Something that gives us great feelings of purpose and reason to continue to be in the industry.
Such a great story, because I love your story so much, Mara, because you were doing something successfully for so long, for so many years, and were able to convert into a whole new purpose and show the industry how possible it is to change. So, thank you for sharing that. Tabitha, you've done so many things, and I would love for you to share with our audience today your transitions over the past couple of years. And I love the story of your background and where you've come from and where it's brought you to your most recent initiatives. Could you please share?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And just so y'all know, like notifications are going off on my computer and I don't know how to take it off. I tried several things and it's still going off. So yeah, I hope they edit it out. Um, yeah, first of all, just want to say deep gratitude to Anne and also FIT for this opportunity. I have masks from Ngozi, and I have tons of clothes, about half my wardrobe, from Mara Hoffman. So it's a true delight to be on this panel with you all. I am from Trinidad. I came to this country around 19 years ago with 2 suitcases to my name. And I came here because I got a scholarship to a college in Brooklyn, and I knew nothing about the college or what I wanted to do with my life. All I knew was that I was getting a chance to live in New York City. So I took that opportunity and I went on to study psychology because the school that I went to, St. Francis College, didn't have any arts program. So I studied psychology and worked in the field for about 10 years. And then somewhere in the middle there, I started having a quarter life crisis when I turned 25 and started really examining, like, what do I actually want to do with my life? You know, when I'm on my deathbed, what would I wish that I had done? What would I regret? And it brought me back to fashion. I've been making my own clothes since I was really young. My aunt would make some of my clothes for me. I would sketch things for her and go buy fabric. And that was really common back in Trinidad for people to make clothes. It was actually the people with privilege tended to be the ones who would be able to go to the store and shop. So that was a really common experience for me. I was obsessed with dolls up until I was a teenager because I loved dressing them up. So when I sort of had that moment where I was like, where is my heart? What do I want to do? It brought me back to fashion, and I went to I went to FIT, studied fashion design, and worked in the corporate fashion space for some time, and then really got a behind the scenes view of waste in the fashion industry, and that had had a really significant impact on me. And I decided to launch my own line, Tabby Just, back in 2012, with the goal of having a completely zero waste label. And that was able to be possible because it was a pretty small label. I was actually able to have a tight sort of control over a lot of things. And as I grew, there were challenges, and I embraced those challenges. And then in 2016, after the Trump election, I was on social media, like so many people after that day, where he was elected, and just looking to get more involved. I had been involved in the sustainable fashion space, but looking to get more involved in terms of community organizing, feeling sort of an impetus to become more directed in terms of the work I was doing to push back against what I was sure was going to be a really difficult couple of years. And one of my friends had posted that she had started a Facebook page to get women to march in Washington. And she actually is a friend from also the fashion industry, Bob Land. And I reached out to her, and I had started doing a little bit of digging, and I saw that there were a lot of white people that were involved in the organizing of the march, and that criticism started bubbling up a little bit. And I reached out to her, and I told her that I wanted to be involved, and I did not want to be a token. I wanted to actually work. And that started my journey in with the Women's March. And over the past couple of years, it's sort of taken up much more of my time, and I now serve as our deputy executive director of program. And after the summer of uprising last year, after George Floyd's murder, I started being a little bit more public about my views concerning racial equity in the fashion industry, and started consulting with luxury fashion brands around how they can make actionable commitments to make change in their companies, starting first on an internal basis, and then having it go through to the community, to their homes, and so forth. So that is a little bit of me. I'm a mom. I have two kids. My son is 6 and my daughter is 19 months. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. You know, it's interesting. Tabitha used to sell her clothing line in my store, Bhoomki. And I remember when you would come into the store, we would have these conversations. And, you know, my store's been almost open for almost 10 years now. And we would have these conversations and say, like, where are all of the people of color on the sustainable fashion panels? And I'm just so excited that we're doing the sustainable fashion panel, and we just have this beautiful rainbow of faces, and there are people of color that are representing. So how much things have changed, right, Tabitha?
Yeah, it's been interesting for sure.
It's been really interesting. I don't think we're completely there yet, but it's just been great to see how much things have developed and changed. And a little bit about me. I have been working in this industry for almost 17 years now. But my work really started out in development, working with artisans and textile artisans in India. I was really concerned about how textiles were dying, and I was interested in making sure that those endangered textiles had voice and a place. And I also saw the amount of atrocities that were happening within the supply chain within India during those years. And since 2012, I've run a company, Bhoomki, which is a platform for sustainable fashion designers. Actually, when we started out, there were very few stores that were completely committed to that, but we've been committed to that since day one. And I'm a curator and a designer and an educator. I run the fashion program at the School of the New York Times. And I am so honored to be here with all of you having this conversation. And so I'm just going to get into it. You know, the past year has been, I don't even know what to say. I'm not going to use that word like unprecedented because, you know, we hear all these words, but so many things have happened. We have had a global pandemic. We have had the largest human rights protests in the history of our country in the past year. We had an uprising in our capital. There have been so many issues for us to rally around. But what I think all of us have also seen, or like we're like Mara touched on, like how things have changed in our supply chains, how we've had to pivot, how we have had to find different ways of creating community. For me, like, you know, as a small business owner, as having a store, like so much of my community has been about those people that come into my store to have that physical interaction. And I'm just wondering what all of you have done to create community within this past year, and how to make those connections that we've had to make virtually. Mara, how have you been able to approach that?
I mean, can you even use the word wild around it? I mean, it's just, I feel like we've gone through as a company so many different types of contractions and painful bits and, you know, reforming, but nothing, there's just, of course, nothing that could compare to the scale of this one and the pace in which it formed itself. And I think that that was just such an epic part of this, that there was no time to like grasp or plan or consider you know, like thoughtful pathways to run a business and hold something to the other side. And I think a lot about that difference between reacting and responding, and, you know, always trying to choose how to respond to anything as opposed to being in this like quick reaction where oftentimes like it doesn't, you know, serve you or the people that are involved when you're just like in reaction mode. But this past year, I mean, thinking about right now, a year ago, on the 27th of March, I furloughed half of my company. And it was, and that decision had to be made within, we all went home on the 14th, or we started working remotely on the 14th, and things drastically spiraled down so quickly that we had to make that big of a decision that in that short of a time. So um the whole company contracted about 50%. Extraordinary, like so quick you couldn't catch, you know, you couldn't catch a handle anywhere. And so the idea of going through these types of decisions and having a family as well, I have a 9-year-old son, and your own, first of all, your own personal like levels of fear, uncertainty, grief, all of the things happening, and then understanding that you have a team of people, a collective of people that are experiencing their own personal version of this, and also are trying to hold on to their employment and any, you know, bit of financial security, and watching around. And I'm not trying to paint like the word, but just to give a little bit of perspective of a, you know, relatively small business, and this is 20 years of business, and feeling that we were in a pretty stable position. So understanding like it was a tsunami of, there was, we could never have expected for anything, and the actions that had to take place. And so it was a very, I feel like I've never, you know, I've never been more stretched or more challenged in a position of leadership when it came to holding community, because I had to hold my own discomforts and then hold the place and the space for my team to feel some sense of like even a glimpse of security, the ones that were still, you know, part of the company. And so it took a while. I mean, something like that just took, and you just sort of had to surrender to leading with vulnerability and trust that these people know who you are, and that faking some like false sense of like stoicness when you're, you know, it wasn't about losing my mind or losing, you know, fully like losing the picture. Like we had to hold it together. And when I say myself, I mean a team of people too. I have a few VPs in my company that I don't even know what I would have done without. You know, Celine DiCarlo, Dana Davis, my commercial VP, who I don't think you guys know so much, Macarena Cifuentes. And I leaned on my I leaned on my community. I leaned on the people in my company. It was almost like we were laughing that it was sort of like this dance, like a dance marathon of going. And then you're like, I need to sit down for a minute. I'm tapping out. And then somebody else would get up and like dance the marathon and be like, I gotta sit down. But through that, we found, we found a very beautiful thing come out of it. And I think so many of us like sit back now at this year mark and be like, oh my God, and be able to point out like all of the grief and all of the loss and all of those parts, and now be able to form and see like also the beauty and also like all of like the new seeds that got planted in like the darkest soil, like that dark, like soil that's incredibly fertile but super terrifying because you can't see through it, you don't really know what it is, but seeds were planted during that time, and it has so much to do with community and this idea of trust between people and a a true sense of vulnerability and intimacy. I mean, we spent a year talking to one another in each other's bedrooms. Like you think about that and you think about what it was to hold a proper company culture and what that looks like. And we don't refer to people as family. We respect boundaries. There's this, of course, like there's work, life boundaries, and all of a sudden we're all in our houses. We're all living with each other's children and spouses and beds behind them, and nobody can go anywhere. So everyone turns out is working all the time, which was such a wild outcome of, you think that it's like you'd work less, but you're working now. It's like, well, I'm just going to keep working. And you're with each other in such an intimate level. And I can't even imagine trying to recreate that under any other like set of conditions. So within that, there was this whole other level of community being built, and it was built on trust, vulnerability, each other's intimacy, and a shared sense of like camaraderie and partnership and love. I don't know how we would have gotten through this without that. So for us, back before all of this, community meant something like much more expanded. It was, let's host our community all the time. Let's have people come and take the studio and do their events, and hopefully we can support that and really expand community. And this became community. It started like, oh my God, this community. And slowly then, even with the women on this panel, like what that meant then to be able to expand out, like the panels that we saw each other on. I mean, I think back to like this summer and these conversations that we were having when all of us still were like, oh my God, but being able to show up and what it meant to show up during that time and during still this time, it's far different. So I don't know if I answered your question. I just told you the pain points of it, but a lot was built.
I think you totally answered my question. I love like how you talked about how so many of us, myself included, also as a business owner, how we really had to strip down to the bare essentials and to find that place of vulnerability to figure out like what is really important. What do we need to do? What are the most important things that we need to do for our businesses to survive, but also for us to come out of this changed, partially intact, but better because we've been able to figure that out. And Ngozi, one of the things that we were talking about before we all started was, the work that you have been doing. And while everyone is talking about the death of the garment district, right, in New York City, or that New York City manufacturing is dead, but you are proof that it is not, because of the capacity building and the outreach work that you have done, the training and the education of those in underserved communities. And I'm wondering how you have been able to build community with your workforce, or to be able to expand that community in these virtual days of communication.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I started thinking as Mara was talking, and I realized that at Custom Collaborative, we have multiple communities. Like, of course, we have our staff community, And we have the community of program participants, which each of them really makes strong. And then our external community. So, right, we're located in East Harlem and West Harlem. And then I guess we would also say our community of supporters, right? So we're a nonprofit. And so we rely on other people to keep us moving. And some of those people are on this panel, right? So, thinking about like immediately what happened with COVID, we decided, even before we closed the office, that we would call all of our program participants, past and present, and find out how were they doing, what were their needs. And to a person, there was one person who had not lost her job, but most of the women who work with us, whether they work in fashion or food or both or whatever, their jobs required them to be hands-on and with people. And so one person lost 3 jobs. And so we were like, all right, well, we've got to figure out something to do. And so we called one of our partners, Riverside Church, and they opened up their food pantry. Some of the women themselves did some house swaps and helping each other reach resources. But internally, we realized that we had to do something, right? Because our whole purpose is to provide earned income opportunities for women, right? And so then if their jobs are closing, well, we need to stay open. And so we initially thought that we would work on a gown making project for a local government. And then that didn't pan out, mostly because they wanted made in Asia prices. And then we're like, okay, well, we're going to do something. And through a series of meetings and brainstorming, we decided that we would make masks. And so some of community was talking to Mara and Dana and Celine and them saying, Okay, we'll go to our office and pick up these bolts of fabric." Some community showed up and saying, "Tabitha, we've made these masks. Will you wear a mask and show it to your community? Because, we paid these makers to make these masks and now we got to sell them." Right. So that was definitely some of the ways in which community showed up. And I think also internally, our staff community got stronger because I'm unfortunately one of those people who like runs to emergencies. And so like I definitely couldn't be a firefighter because I'd be worried about sweating in my hair. But if I were a physician, I'd be an ER doctor, right? Like where's the problem? Let's fix it. And so in addition to saying like, yeah, let's make these masks, we don't have any idea how we're going to sell them. But I also said to our staff, all right, so we're going to meet every day. We're going to meet every day on Zoom at 10 o'clock, and we're going to show up. And I think every day our warm up is going to be, what are you wearing? Because I had the sense that people were feeling like they were floating, like they were alone, like everything was unstable. And I did not want anybody who was in my care in any way at all to spiral down. And so I just felt like, okay, so if we meet every day and I force you to get dressed, then you'll have something to do and you'll have some place to be, even if you can't be someplace physically. And that really helped us because, being in 2 different locations, usually we don't have as much interaction with people. So we petered that down to just 2 meetings a week, but that initial being stuck together and looking in people's bedrooms and everything else, I think helped us really brainstorm and figure out how do we remain relevant, how do we exercise our resilience, and how do we support the people who have entrusted their careers to us.
Wow, that's amazing. I just love that you had everyone getting dressed. The simple act of getting dressed and how that really connected everyone to one another and to themselves to be able to rise up. Um, Tabitha, so what have been your initiatives and how have you been able to connect with your community around the various things that have happened in this year? I know that you've been so incredibly active on social, and so what has been your strategy for connecting?
I mean, I'm an organizer. So for the last 4 years, I've been on the streets at marches and protests across the country. My daughter went to her first march when she was 1 month old. So the experience of the pandemic really forced a little bit of a reckoning around what does community look like? What does connection look like? What does impact look like in a digital space? And something that's more than just webinars, but how can we create that sort of connection with people? And that shift was a necessary one, because I think so many people, their lives were going on, things were happening. There were things that were happening across the world that needed attention, needed focus, needed activism. And one example of that is back in my country of Trinidad, there was an outbreak of gender-based violence. And what I really learned from getting involved with that movement was that this opportunity that we have right now, and I'm choosing to look at it as an opportunity in a nuanced way, because it's also a very painful, very distressing time for so many people. But how can we look at this and think about how can we expand into this moment? How can we find different spaces to show up that we would not have been able to show up in if we had to show up in person all the time? So a group of friends and I from Trinidad formed a collective of women from Trinidad across the world who started organizing to bring about a public awareness campaign around the Purple Bench campaign back in Trinidad. And we threw our support behind a woman, Miss Mars, who runs a shelter in Trinidad and Tobago, and who literally in the midst of a pandemic was housing people in her house who were fleeing their homes because of violence. And we were able to raise money for her to expand her programs. We were able to really connect with her and to really garner support from all over the world for her. So that's just an example of how I chose to sort of lean into this moment that we have right now, where I'm missing connection with people for sure. I'm missing for sure going to events at Mara Hoffman space, going to protests, going to marches, being able to have my son in school. But it sort of created this space for us to expand in the work that we're doing and to have conversations in a way that have not been had before, and to reach people and to hear from people about the ways that their lives have been changing in the midst of this pandemic, in the context of this pandemic, but also outside of it, as so many people are still going through painful circumstances and still facing so much suffering.
I love what you said about, how do we find access those spaces that we normally wouldn't, right? During through these opportunities that we've had actually connecting to people. If you have internet connectivity and someone else has internet connectivity, maybe we wouldn't have explored those new spaces. So I love what you said about that. Mara, after 15 years of running your business, you pivoted to more responsible and sustainable practices. And I was wondering, can you talk about how you've created space for underserved communities here and abroad through some of your company's initiatives?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here with our probably numero uno co-collaborator, Ngozi, and enormous teacher. And the work that we've been able to do together has been just, first of all, it feels like just very much at the beginning phases, even though it's been for some time. But learning so much through the work that Ngozi has established and done, and then being able together, for example, we were part of this program called the 1x1 program. And I'm like so lost on time now. Like, when did that even begin and end? Like, that began, like, it was concepted in 2019, and then it was supposed to go into action, through 2020. So basically it was setting up a program where Ngozi's students would come and learn from our, from our team, the skill set then to be able to go directly into working within an ethical or sustainable company. So basically we were working together as our final product is to make a framework that we would then be able to say, okay, this is how this system works, and apply it. And we are still working that way. So apply this towards other fashion brands. And so the intentionality of that was to be an in-person experience, of course, where these women would come and learn in person and feel fabrics and learn for a technical designer. And so we focused it on technical design. And then we had to pull this off or find our way, echoing again Tabitha and everyone. It's just like how incredibly adaptable actually human beings are. We're so extraordinarily stuck in certain ways and stubborn when it comes to change, but when we're really open to it, we're so adaptable. And so like, where do we, how do we keep that going, that ability to like make things work at all, as opposed to getting like stuck in the small blocks. But so we did it virtually, and it was a success. And it felt like, okay, if we can do this virtually, imagine now what we're going to be able to do when we're in person, and how we're going to be able to set this thing off. So I firmly believe that we're going to be able to like be with each other in the fall. I think about that. I mean, I am not a doctor, nor am I a scientist, but I'm a feeler, and I'm feeling towards the fall that we'll be able to like pick this back up and build frameworks. So that's a very huge part of it for us. Like other initiatives, has always been about amplification for us. Like we sit in a position of both privilege and influence. Fashion is a sexy space to be in, and people like to look at it and pay attention to it and participate in it. So when you can open that up to purpose, and you can pass your platform over to people that need, or causes, human beings, whatever it is. So like making the clothing almost like, it's sort of, I forgot, we used to use a word for it. It was like, it wasn't the real deal. It was like the stuff, I forgot what it's called. But anyways, like the clothing was a side gig, and the other part was about like, well, what do we do now? All right, people are looking, people are paying attention. What can we actually do with this thing? So before this year, like everyone's mentioned, our space was such a space for that. And it was really getting off the ground. It was a very beginning of being able to say, take it, the Women's Prison Association would have their beautiful graduations in that space. We would host custom collaborative and the beautiful classes. I mean, it was just awesome for that part of it. And then as far as like partners overseas, we work so closely with our factories there and our manufacturers. They're really like, any of our manufacturers are very close to us. Like nobody is a mystery, nobody is like some person we just email with. So they're all extensions of our group. But we've been able to work closely with Nest, which is, I'm sure that organization, where they've been able to like be on the ground and work directly with the artisans that we work with and help build their business and their revenue streams. And then we've been in turn been able to like help expand their businesses out, or build websites for our partners. And any way to like just expand their businesses. So, I mean, those are a few of the things. And then I think just on these like one-on-one basis of the people in my company that are very, very, very passionate about the work that they do, from social justice to environmental and like everything. And then I really I feel very passionate about both of those, but I also sit very passionately in the creativity space, and like how in that expansion space and how we bring that all together. So I'm kind of glue for these like magnificent brains that are in my company that people here know, and they lend themselves so generously. I feel not generously, it's just like as we should be to others' expansion.
That's fantastic. I want to hear more about one-on-one, but I also want to hear Ngozi about the campaign that you launched. What have you done since June 2020? Can you tell us more about it? Its mission of accountability and who you've reached through it. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah, sure. So it's actually almost an outgrowth of One by One. So then One by One was this project that Swarovski and United Nations Department of Partnerships funded, and Slow Factory Foundation really created and made this idea happen. And so they paired three designers with three scientists. And so one of the scientists was actually Thean Shiros, who worked with a company and made maybe like some type of natural leather, and somebody else worked with another designer and made algae sequin dress, right? And then Mara and Custom Collaborative were paired, and so we were really the social scientists. And so then this idea that Mara is talking about was like, okay, how do we prepare people to be in these jobs in the fashion industry? And usually when people come to Custom Collaborative as students, they just know of jobs of like, okay, designer or seamstress. And so part of what we do is like expand the possibilities for them. And so then for them to be able to go in and work with Mara's team learning technical design was an amazing opportunity. I mean, we had originally, of course, pre-COVID planned for it to be like 3 different tracks, but the technical design was great. And so that's One by One. And so then afterwards, we were thinking about like, okay, how do we extend the impact? And through the discussions with Slow Factory, somehow we got to, all right, well, all these people put up black squares in June 2020, and these are the same companies that need to hire our participants or fund our work so we can expand and do the things that we're meant to do. What have they done? What are you doing? And so like, here's your opportunity. And just thinking about kind of like what Mara said about how her space was used, they were very generous with the space. And International Women's Day last year was supposed to be like, we were supposed to do a launch party at Mara's studio. So we didn't have it, right? And here we are, you know, we're again in a fundraising campaign that was International Women's Day. And so, you know, there's companies that I've been talking to the past few days, unfortunately not fashion, but hopefully the fashion companies will get on board, because it's not just about having this Black fashionable square. It's about what are you doing to protect Black and Brown people, and both within your companies and within society. And so we're really, I think, giving people the opportunity to make good on what they said, on what they expressed that they would do after George Floyd was killed in the street, right? So that's the genesis of both One by One and What Have You Done?
So what were some of the things that people did, or how are they able to show their accountability and their response to this question?
I think that's a really good question. You know, we've let's just hope that by June 2021, more will have happened. But the responses that we've had, and it's not been just since we've done our campaign, but responses have come from um, I would say related, like adjacent to fashion industry businesses, but not as much fashion industry. So if anybody who's watching this and feels the need to support the people who make clothes and to support a new way of being, transforming the fashion industry, holler.
Well, it's so interesting because like I often have thought about how we see so many designers where the face of their brand is a woman of color, right? But here we are once again using Black bodies, to for the brand, but what is really happening within these organizations? And so that actually just naturally brings me to you, Tabitha, and the work that you are doing to promote more racial equity within luxury brands. And I'm like wondering what sorts of structures and policies are you helping them put in place? Like, I was really inspired by what Ava DuVernay, for example, is doing for film and television. She has this database for POC and LGBTQ communities called the Array Crew. Like, how can the fashion industry build its own database of C-suite executives and designers from racially diverse backgrounds within the fashion industry? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think that the fashion industry, I mean, it's an industry that is so harmful in so many ways, to marginalized groups who are, um, the ones most times who are like carrying the industry on their backs, and who are the ones who are not paid adequately, and who by intention and design are specifically kept out of the public consciousness of what fashion is supposed to be. You know, the large fashion companies want the experience for the consumer to be, you go into a store, you see something pretty, you pay for it, you buy it, and you wear it. And it's so much more than that. And the people that are left out of that conversation are most times women and marginalized people. So the work that I do specifically is sort of multi-layered. I don't think we can undo hundreds of years of oppression and racism in a couple, you know, D, DEI courses, or even in like one panel discussion. I think it takes commitment. I think it takes actionable commitment, and a commitment to learning and growing. So I focus on a couple layers. I focus first on personal growth and learning, and then on the interpersonal, and then on the systemic. So when I choose to work with a company, I sort of think about it as working with the CEO and the founder and the people in the C suite, and then having it not trickle down to the rest of the brand, but really expand into the rest of the brand. Because we know that once you have a decision maker that is realizing the impact of racial inequities in the workplace, and once they're on board with the change that needs to happen, then they can carry the company with them, and they can really push things forward. I am honestly invigorated by what's happening in the fashion industry right now. Things like the Black in Fashion Council, who are really centering Black and brown people and creating opportunity for them, and holding brands accountable in a way that is not centered around a call out. And we know that call outs are necessary sometimes and in some spaces, because it has to do with accountability. But what happens when you are working with a brand that is actually ready to learn and grow, and is just looking for tools and skills and the types of resources they need to push them further? And those are the type of brands that I'm really excited about working with. And I think there's also different initiatives. I know there's one at Creatively, which is a platform, like a job application platform. I discovered that a couple of months ago, where they specifically have a section that's creating opportunity for Black and brown people, that is done in partnership with the CFDA. So we know that the industry still has just so much work to do and so far to go. But I think hope is what pushes me forward. Hope is what will give us the energy to keep going, and will sort of invigorate us to get the work done. And I am hopeful for the industry.
So, Mara, I'm coming back to, how you made this beautiful transition from, moving into and making sure that sustainability for the people on the planet was, the central focus for your brand, while you did not have to give up beauty and desirability within your designs. What do you think what we can do as an industry to find more Mara Hoffmans, to find more designers who've just sort of, have been who've been operating in the status quo, and but how can we get them to transition like you did? How can we inspire more to do what you did?
I think it's a mix. I first of all, I think that there are people out there that just have not gotten the support. Like, it's like sort of echoing again Tabitha, both Ngozi and Tabitha. I mean, there are people out there like doing the work. I don't. Yes, transitioning existing businesses who have just like not done anything about it. That's one pathway. but it's also recognizing the people that have been doing this work who have just not been recognized, and applying support, whether it's through mentoring or financial, or giving a voice to the people really that have been doing it longer than I've been doing it. And who just haven't had, maybe, haven't had the circumstances or, the resources to get it to the place that I've been able to do so. So I think that that's one thing, is that we just also have to now expand and recognize and sort of be looking in all directions for this expansion in fashion, not just going to the brands. I mean, of course, like, we need the big guys, we need the people that have been in action for a while to transform. Yes, we absolutely need that, but we kind of need like a new set of leaders too. We need a new world of this, it's like kind of getting the dinosaurs off the island right now a little bit, and making room for this new world which needs to be happening. I think when it comes to transforming, and really, like, if you're going to take the route that I took, as far as like doing something in a certain way for 15 years and then transitioning, I think intentionality is everything in anything that you do. So I guess that would be like your first question: is your intentionality based on like the true uh, immense discomfort that you feel from like the understanding of what is happening, and that that you can't take another step forward until you change everything, because that's the real stuff? Or because you feel pressured by an external narrative that you feel, I have to change, or I'm going to be shamed, or I'm going to be canceled. And I don't think that those are often lasting changes that people make when it comes from that space. Like, real change happens when you are just like aching inside to do it. That's when things stick. So I think people can change, and I think that brands absolutely can. And when the intentionality is there's absolutely ways to do it. There are so many resources now. Like, like Tabitha's been at this, everyone's been at this longer than we have. Like 6 years ago was so different from what right now is. I think about the resources we had, and like, yeah, like, or at least who we knew, like, we knew to reach out to Stella, we knew to reach out to Eileen, we knew to reach out to Patagonia, and thank God for all three of those companies who were already understood like the language of what it means to move towards sustainability, and that is community, and that is collaboration, and that is information sharing, and that is like no proprietary ideas around the things that will benefit us all. You know what I mean? If like you have a better source, you don't get to own that. Like, you have to share that thing. So I think that that's a big part. And if you're looking to transition, you have to like be able to reach out to these people who have done it before you, just like we did. We reached out to people before us. And then you have to ask your own community, and whether that's the people that you're working with or the people that you trust, to truly hold you accountable. Because I think that it's really easy, like when we think about accountability and how easy it is to sort of like not always be in the highest integrity around things. And right now that's just imperative, and it's hard. And it's really, I think very scary when you think about what it means to be in true accountability, of like being able to say all of the things that just aren't there yet or aren't right yet, and like have ownership of like all your great parts and all your parts that are just not so great, or that you're really working on. And that's a big part of it. I think making commitments, and also again asking your community to hold you accountable for the commitments that you make. Like, say them out loud, say the things that you are trying to do. Don't like keep it safe. Yeah, make a statement. That's terrifying, because then you've got to do it, and you can't be like, oh, I guess we'll do it next year. Like, make those commitments, and the people that are around you, have them like, where are you at with this? That's a big one. And I think probably the biggest one around this, and it's like a little bit in the ether, but you have to be really okay with being uncomfortable most of the time. because if you are in this work and you're in fashion, if you are in fashion and you are caring about transforming planet, people, plants, animals, the entire thing, like where all of it, hopefully, but wherever your heart sits, and you're still in fashion, you should be pretty conflicted at most times, because it's just the truth. It's a very conflicted space to be in. If you know, it's why figuring out circularity is so key right now, because if we are manufacturing anything new, there's conflict to it. There's conflict to anything new that you are manufacturing unless you have its end of life completely taken care of. So the discomfort part is like part of the growth. Like when we stop being uncomfortable, we stop growing, basically. And I'm not saying like crushed with discomfort, but like discomfort's the catalyst that like keeps you from sitting comfortably still and like resting in like probably a place that isn't great for you or the environment. So get good with discomfort.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think that, so much of, what we've spoken about here is, about these connections and these collaborations. I mean, and as we all know, working in fashion, that collaboration is really, the foundation of everything we do. And what you said about accountability and transparency, I mean, and those are the things that really allow us to be vulnerable and honest and intimate with one another. And I was talking to a friend of mine last week about greater transparency, as we if we really want to uplift those disenfranchised populations, if we really want to uplift our suppliers, that the IP is really like within our design and how we market, but it should not be with our suppliers. It should not be with like who our artisan partners are or who our factories are. Like I am always all about like sharing that information, because I want my partners to grow and to have more clients, for example. So I love so much that that you shared that. So Ngozi, I think we'll leave the last question for you. We only have a few more minutes, but what's the first party you're gonna have? With the graduates or your entrepreneurs? What's your first gathering gonna be?
And can we get an invite?
Oh my gosh, you're probably going to be like the belle of the ball. Of course you all are there. Oh my gosh. I think actually probably one of the last parties that I attended was like a sustainable fashion thing. Maybe it was like one of the 1 by 1 things. And I just like look back at those pictures and I was like, oh, I don't always love to be at parties, but I really want to be at a party. So like I definitely think we'll have a who has the best mask party, with the the best wine, and everybody bring whatever your favorite COVID snack was. But I want to go back a quick second to something both Tabitha said and Mara said. And so Tabitha said that, yeah, there are companies who are doing the work, and then there are these, websites, which I think is great, where now people are saying, okay, so like let the Black and brown people who have been marginalized, who've been in the industry and not have had the great job opportunities, let's know who they are. I think another function of the industry being the way it was is that people have been turned away. So like we have so many great people with so many ideas and possibilities in their heads who should be at the top of these companies but have not even had an entryway. So I think about the only person who has ever come to Custom Collaborative, at least, and said, oh, I have a client and I need you to make something specifically for this client because of her disability, is Tabitha, right? So Tabitha needs to be long since at the top of one of these companies if that's what she wanted. But I think that there are other people who have these ideas who we've excluded. And so there are, yes, definitely initiatives. And I just want us to expand it and open up and say that it's not just this small group of people, but there are Black people and brown people and people who are differently abled and everything else. And let's bring everybody in. Because honestly, most people are not satisfied with the clothes that we're able to buy off the rack, right? We buy these clothes, we wear them, but there are so many people who the clothes don't fit. And just thinking about the idea of there so many people who are special size, which we'll say like petite, what we call plus, tall, and very few in terms of percentage wise of the clothes fit those people. So I think the more expansive we are, the more opportunity we'll have to make clothes that are not throwaway clothes, and have people feel included and have an equitable industry. So we'll continue to transform it, and we'll have a party. Yeah.
Tabitha or Mara, any last thoughts before we end our panel?
Mar, do you want to go first?
I don't know. No, I don't know if I have one. You go.
I think the thing that I want people to take away um, from this idea of community and how we fit into the community is that it's a beautiful thing. I think that when we find our community, when we find the people that we want to invest in, it's a really beautiful thing. And I think in many ways, it's the thing that's going to bring us out of this pandemic in a way that is healing for all of us, and in a way that will leave us with lessons that hopefully people will take even into their lives when, I mean, things are never going to get back to normal, but when we reemerge, I think. So yeah, I think that's how I want to end. And I want to remind people that if change seems very intimidating, that shouldn't stop you from trying anyway. That, you know, it may look daunting to think about making changes in your company and being more racially equitable. But sometimes getting there is just about baby steps. And the first thing is to actually try.
Yeah, I mean, you just, both Ngozi and Tabitha, you kind of wrapped it up. You said the things, the beautiful, important things. My own, like I'd sprinkle, us, remaining open to our pursuit of beauty and to creativity and the importance of it when we are even in our darkest points and struggle, and the idea of purpose and point of view, and how important that is. And I would throw that back to that last question about, for people wanting to transition or transform, to really know that you have a point of view that has purpose right now, and they can't be disconnected parts of putting things out there. Like, I just designed because it's beautiful and I want people to feel like, you also can't, well, it's just purposeful and it's just ethical and it's just hitting all of these marks. Like, it's really sort of that bringing together, like that's the magic of making this thing work, because who are we as a world without beauty? It's so important to the human experience. Like, we need that, and we will need it even more and more as we go forward in what will continue to be extraordinarily challenging times as we figure it out as human beings, because we have so far to go to figure it out and like reset ourselves in order to reset the planet. It has to happen with us first before we see it out there, but we will need that beauty to like soften our way through this. So I will say that.
Ngozi, any last thoughts?
No, I think though that maybe we should host the party at Mara's.
Yes.
Judging by her background.
Totally.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
an hour and a half north of the city. And I have a porch, and I'm not even kidding. If people are up for it this summer, we're doing it. Okay. So you guys
I love it.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. You all are just such an inspiration, and in the ways that you've created community within your organizations, with your followings, with anyone that has an interest in what you have to do. It's been beautiful to watch, and I look forward to seeing what all of you do next as we maybe like take off our masks, hopefully soon. Thank you again, and enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's
Thank
been
you.
great.
Bye.
I much appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you guys. That was awesome. You guys were great. Such meaningful conversation. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. Thank you again so much for your time.
Thanks, Anne.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Bye.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. I'll be in touch. Please send me your paperwork too.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Well.